Folks, can you raise your hands if you've ever had a paper rejected by a journal? This talk is for you, all right. Firstly, why publish at all? Is it because of fame? Is it your career? Do you need to spread a message? Is it money? Are you publishing because everybody else does? Somewhere in there may be your reasons. The first thing is you dream up a project, then you write a paper, then you submit it to a journal, then you get a peer review, and then you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and eventually you get a decision. Now that decision will be accept or resubmit or reject. And if it's a reject, well, you can send it to the Journal of Universal Rejection, which does actually exist. Now, what actually would generally happen is you reject it, and I'm going to laugh now. You reject it, and then you submit it back to a journal, and on the sequence goes. The acceptance rate of most of the journals to which we will submit our papers in this day and age is roughly 20%. And my guess is you feel rather hard done by. Now, I want to speak to you as a writer. I write in my other life. I edit in my other life. I am also a hip preservation surgeon. So out in the big world of wide world of writing, what is the situation? Well, you have a manuscript, you submit it to your agent. Now your agent, my agent for example, will then submit it to a publisher. My agent receives 3,500 requests every year by people for her to represent. She selects 2 every year. She basically will work on the basis of 60% acceptance of manuscripts she submits to a publisher. Now, on that basis, it's extremely hard to get an agent, and so most of us will actually submit the manuscript directly to the publisher. Go to an average publisher out there, they will get 5,000 manuscripts per year, 95% of them will be rejected, 5% will have a second look, they will accept 0.25%. So you tell me that 20% is a poor acceptance rate. Believe you me, it is not. In the big wide world of writing, it is 0.25%. And we generally say out there in the writing world, basically, if your manuscript can't find a home, then the best place to look for the problem is in a mirror. So let's basically have a discussion about how things might be made better. There is a learning curve, of course, isn't there? I mean, for example, for surgeons who do esophagogastrectomy, there is a learning curve. For those who are doing spinal surgery, there's a learning curve. We've got THA, there is a learning curve. So in many respects, why should publishing be any different? What makes us think that we can write one paper, submit it to a publisher, and it's going to get accepted? In exactly the same way as what makes us think we can do one hip replacement and make it perfect? Of course we can't. And then there are reviewers. Well, as an editor, what about these reviewers? There is perfection and there is reality. Remember, the reviewer is a human being, okay? He doesn't want to do 15 reviews. He's rushing out the door. His wife is throwing a saucepan. The butter is rancid. The shirt is dirty. There's nothing to eat in the house, and he's stressed. And now he's being asked to review your paper. So somehow you've got to make him understand. The reality is, for reviewers, they rarely agree. And then as an editor, you always read the review. You want to understand how the reviewer has reached his or her conclusion. You want to watch out for conflict of interest. I mean, how could it just be, perhaps, that the subject matter on which you have written may match exactly the subject matter that the reviewer is currently researching and is just about to submit to the same journal? It happens, believe you me. And you also understand there is no such thing as a happy, rejected author. I tend to find as an editor, every paper has a message, doesn't matter what it is, every single one has, and decisions are frequently a compromise. To get different reviewers to agree is almost impossible. Can you influence a reviewer? Well, you can. How many of you fish? I mean, I fish, and what you do is you put the fly out in the water, okay, and you tempt the reviewer in, bit by bit by bit. You don't go and grab it and feel offended when he decides your work is no use at all. So there is a trick to it. And let me sort of give you an idea. The quality of the writing and the quality of the presentation. Let's look at the quality of the writing first of all. Here's a typical paper title. A randomized controlled trial of 478 bingo total hip arthroplasties, 5-year medium-term survival. I think we'd all agree that's a standard, pretty reasonable orthopedic title. Let me just change the wording a bit. How about early failure of the bingo total hip arthroplasty, a randomized controlled trial? I sense it might just be a little bit better. If I'm about to run out the kitchen, off to work, and the wife is shouting at me, that might be something that will make me stay behind and read that paper. How about the tense, active or passive? Here we got the abstract, okay? 433 patients, 478 hips, who had undergone a bingo cementless total hip arthroplasty were investigated. Of these, 422 hips, 395 patients were available for analysis in order to establish the survivorship of the bingo total hip replacement. Now, I think you will agree that's a perfectly reasonable abstract. But is it? We start with a number, never start a sentence with a number. Okay, we're talking about patients and hips. Here we're talking about hips and patients. We're talking about arthroplasty and replacement, all in the same paragraph. We have instantly made it difficult for the reviewer to sort of work out what's going on. We've used 37 words, we've used the passive tense. Let me just change it. Let's go to this. We investigated 433 patients, 478 hips, who had undergone a bingo total hip replacement. There were 395 patients, 422 hips, available for survivorship analysis. I've used the active tense, I've turned it down to 24 words, I've got rid of the number at the start, I put patients and hips right the way, the same way round, and I've used just the word replacement once and got rid of arthroplasty. So there's readability. If you're actually presenting it to somebody, okay, there are certain key rules that you should follow. Don't use too many font sizes. We'll talk about sans serif face in a second. Don't use too many typefaces. And then basically emphasis, alignment, contrast. We'll go briefly through that. Serif versus non-serif, just to recap what that is. This is serif, okay? Basically, those little things that stick up or along were based on gravestones, okay? They were based on stone sculpture. They are used for hard copy. I'd recommend, however important you may feel they make you look, do not use them when something is submitted digitally, okay? Go for something like Arial, go for something like Verdana, and get rid of the serif altogether. It is easier on a screen than serif text. When it comes to emphasis, now this is an abstract submitted to us. I've ignored the grammar, okay, but let's look at the emphasis, how you might emphasize things. You can use bold. I don't really like that much bold. You can use italics. I don't really like that. You can use underlining. I don't really like that. You can use little bits of bold, italics, and underlining. I don't like any of that. Basically, your emphasis should be in terms of the English that you use and the grammar you use to stress the point. How about capitalization? We get some papers coming through in capitals because the author thinks they really are important. And how about spacing? Well, here we've got single spacing. Here we've got no spacing at the margins, how difficult it is to read. Here we've got double spacing, or 1.5 spacing. Suddenly it starts to get a little bit easier on the eye, okay, and we haven't used serif text at all. How about justification? Well, here we've got a vertical left margin. We've got a ragged right. I think that's probably quite easy to read. We've got here central justification. No good, I would suggest. We've got right justification. No good, I would suggest. We've got this, which many people use because that's what books do, and they think the submission looks very important. But I would suggest the text above is easier to read than the text below, and go for a ragged right. Length of sentences. We've got this sentence, which is all one sentence. Basically, why not simply shorten it down? We're going to say here, hip arthroscopy has gained wider popularity in the last decade, full stop. Start again. For symptoms attributed to intra-articular pathology and so on. So keep sentences short. Length of the paragraphs. Quite a long paragraph, split them up and make them easier on the eye and to read. Keep your language simple. Have a read of that. Raise your hand when you've read it. Okay. The bottom line is, I bet you most of you are struggling with those words, all right? Now, actually, most of you actually read it, and you read it because you demonstrated how people read, okay? They read very rapidly. They take the first and the last letter, okay? And it says that. Can you read this? Only 55 people out of 100 can. I couldn't believe that I could actually understand what I was reading. The shape of the paper. This is how a paper is. It goes from a title to an abstract, and through it goes. So you have the title, you have the abstract, which you often leave to the junior. Don't. Remember, it's the one thing that's going to be on PubMed. It's going to be the one thing that's going to stay with you for life. The introduction is an introduction, okay? It introduces everything. You focus a lot on patients and methods, results, and statistical analysis, but actually your reviewer, much as he ought to spend his time on that, tends not to. Okay, so the bit he's going to read is really your title, the abstract. You may get him as far as the introduction. You'll then get him into the discussion or the conclusion. These are the bits that people actually read in real life. And then the references, be sure if you're submitting to the Journal of Gobbledygook, you do have a few references from the Journal of Gobbledygook in the list of references to which you're submitting. And also finish where you start. i.e., if you're saying at the beginning of the introduction, we are looking at the outcome, let us say, of femoroacetabular impingement, finish your whole discussion with the conclusion about how you started. So it's a nice, comfortable feel, and the whole thing appears sort of a round, logical sequence of reading. And then remember the bottom drawer technique. You've done your publication, you've done your paper, don't then submit it and get rid of it. Step back, put it in the bottom drawer, or the digital equivalent of the bottom drawer, leave it there for 2 weeks, then get it out again. And I promise you, you'll find you've written complete rubbish and will want to start all over again. Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, if your manuscript can't find a home, then the best place to look for the problem is in a mirror. Thank you very much indeed.